Hello everyone and welcome to another Young Adult Book Talk with the Massillon Regional Library. I'm Miss Stephanie, one of the librarians in the Youth Services Department, and today I have chosen books that deal with mental health, or teenagers that have struggles with mental health. And before I talk about these books, I'd like to emphasize that if you struggle with mental health, it doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that you just have a problem with your brain that you need to take care of. If you had diabetes, a physical health problem, you would take insulin. And if you have like depression or anxiety, you would take medication, talk to a counselor, or just there's other ways to treat it as well. And what I like about all three of these books is all three of these teenagers deal with very different mental health problems, but the authors do not label them as crazy. They're just teens who are quirky, they're interesting, and they just have some struggles that some other teens don't. And so I want to start with Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. And this is about Darius. He is half Persian, half German. He is all-American, or so we like to think, because he feels like he doesn't fit in both worlds. Like, his mom and sister speak Farsi, which is a Persian language at home, but he is bullied at school for being half Iranian. But Darius wants to learn more about his culture, and he gets the chance when his grandfather back in Iran is diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. So his family goes to Iran to visit him before he passes away. And Darius has only met his grandfather through a computer screen before, so he feels awkward, but he's really eager to meet him. And he also feels conflicted because he feels more connected to a new best friend, Sorab, than his grandfather, because his grandfather doesn't quite understand why Darius takes medication for depression. And throughout the visit, Darius learns to appreciate the Persian side of his family, and while fighting to keep an ever-fragile relationship with his father, who also struggles with depression. And I love Darius' quirky personality. He was obsessed with tea. He handled his bullying by calling his bullies the soulless minions of orthodoxy, which I found amusing. And I enjoyed all the interactions with his family, and what I like is that while they don't necessarily understand what Darius is going through, or they don't know the words to say, they still care and support him. And also, I just like to emphasize this book did a great job of talking about Persian culture, the language. I learned so much about it through, and I liked it because it lent itself to the story. It felt very natural, not like it was forced, like here's a fact about Persian language or Farsi. It was very interesting and integrated well into the story. And I'm pleased to say that there is a sequel called Darius the Great Deserves Better, and I've read it, and it is just as good as the first one. And I also like to emphasize that this is a Virginia Reader's Choice book. Now, the second one is called Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and Asa Holmes has plenty on her plate for her junior year of high school, struggling with the loss of her father a few years ago, trying to figure out what to do about college, her art classes, and she's dealing with an obsessive-compulsive disorder where she can't stop thinking that she's going to catch this nasty bacterial infection called C. diff. But she's also dealing with some other typical teenage struggles, like with a relationship with her long-term best friend Daisy. An old friend Davis is coming back to her life, but there's also, she finds that he gets a huge amount of cash as a result of a criminal investigation, and she's trying to help Davis to get to the bottom of his father's disappearance a few weeks earlier. So what I liked about this is that John Green, he struggled with obsessive-compulsive disorder as a teenager as well. And also, I didn't mention, but the author of Darius the Great struggled with depression as a teen as well. But back to Turtles All the Way Down. And it is very authentic, very he knew what it's like to go through this mental health issue. And it's really evident in the way he's writing it. And I loved Asa's and Daisy's friendship. It was so great because it was realistic in that Daisy had some legitimate frustrations with Asa, being obsessed with this bacterial infection, not paying enough attention to their friendship. But instead of handling it kind of maturely, Daisy was kind of self-absorbed and mean-spirited herself by venting her frustrations out through writing a fan fiction character instead of talking to Asa herself. And I liked it. The romance with Davis felt a little tacked on, but I really liked the character of Davis, so it was something that I feel like didn't take away from the story. And it's a good realistic ending of Asa's relationship with Davis and Daisy. And it also emphasizes that sometimes medication isn't an instant cure, for obsessive compulsive disorder, but it can definitely improve mental health symptoms and resulting in a higher quality of life and better like dealing with problems that any teenager faces. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is Challenger Deep by Neal Shusterman. And Caden Bosch seems like a typical high school student until he starts feeling differently than normal. He's suspicious of everyone around him because he feels like they're going to hurt him, even his own family. And his paranoia becomes so bad that his parents take him to the hospital, where he is hospitalized in the juvenile psychiatric unit for 9 weeks. And he is diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which I didn't know too much about, but basically you have extreme mood swings, but you also deal with paranoia and hallucinations. And this makes Caden, he can't function, unfortunately, so he had to stay at the hospital to see if he can work through these issues. And the book is set up very uniquely because it talks about his stay in the psychiatric unit, but it also is dealing with how Caden is coping with his problems and these stresses that no one else is dealing with. And he's like has these fantasies about being on a ship to the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the ocean, and there's a pirate crew, and they are reflective of what he's dealing with in the hospital. And the stakes get higher as the book progresses, as Caden struggles to figure out what is real and what is not before it's too late. And I want to start off saying, like, this is definitely the most intense and darkest novel of the bunch. I feel like the other two, they used some humor to balance things out a bit, but this had some humor, but not as much as the other ones. But I think that's more realistic because they are teenagers who deal with these severe mental health problems. And I think that it was hard for me to read in places, I will say, but it was still an excellent read. I still highly recommend it, but just a little trigger warning going in. And Neal Shusterman's son dealt with schizoaffective disorder, and his son's artwork is actually included in this book too. And I like emphasizing how Shusterman emphasizes that Caden is still a teenager. He's interested in art. He's intelligent. He's very observant. And it's just a really good read. And you have to also keep in mind the narrative can shift because the shift between his stay in the hospital and what he's dealing with in his fantasies on the Challenger Deep, on the ship that goes to the Challenger Deep. And like I said, I feel like this approach reflects the confusion that many teenagers with schizoaffective illnesses face when they experience the symptoms of hallucination and paranoia. And so those are the books for this month. I do want to say that I think that I'm going to finish off with a quote from Shusterman's book. And it says that he hopes that this book, and I hope that this book and the other books talked about as well, will help others to emphasize and understand what it is like to sail the dark and unpredictable waters of mental illness. And I do hope that if you struggle with mental health problems, or you know a family or friend that struggles with mental health problems, that one of these books or all these books can be helpful in that. And all three of the authors also included some resources at the back of each book, which I'll include at a slide after this talk. So thank you again for joining me. I look forward to sharing more books with you soon. Have a good day. Bye.